Hi guys, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, able to see my screen? Okay. So we have covered about in the DevOps training. We have covered about the Linux scripting. So any one of the scripting they may ask. So one of the scripting we have covered, shell or bash. Okay. Shell scripting or bash scripting, both are same. Okay. So now actual DevOps training will start. So these are the basics for your scripting. Like these are the basics for your DevOps activities. So if you want to perform any DevOps activities, you may get a chance to work on the Windows machines or Linux machines. Okay. If you are working with the Linux environment, everything is a command based. We don't have the UI based. And also to do the small kind of automation works, repetitive work which we are doing in the Linux servers. If you want to take a backup, if you want to create a process checking, anything, if you want to do the manual works. So repetitive work which we are doing the regular basis, they want to convert that regular works into the scripting wise. Okay. It's completely based upon your logical part, how you are implementing it. So that comes under the scripting. So now actual DevOps will be started. Okay. So development work plus operations work. Okay. So development work will be there. Okay, so DevOps is a combination of development work plus operation works. So what comes under the development is developers. It may be coders plus testers. Okay, so operations teams, build and deployment. Okay, so most of the DevOps activities like DevOps roles and responsibilities is like to build the infrastructure. So complete the roles and responsibilities like we need to build the complete infrastructure. Okay. Second, build and deploy. Okay. So if you take any kind of a project, so first of all, we need to build an infrastructure for our company. So what type of a project you are working on it. So how to build infrastructure as a DevOps, most of the activities will be working on a how to build your projects and how to deploy the projects. Okay. So the development work that will be done by the developers. So for example, if you are taking the Java project, so you will be working with Java development team, some Java testers, application testers, and you will be the part of DevOps activities like, so what are the Java activities which is performing by the individual machine. So that work we are going to make the work into the automation way and visible to all the team members which is present in the team. Okay. So main activities is like a DevOps activities. It's like a building your project, deploying your project and visible to all the teammates which are working in a project, and we are going to prepare the whole work into a automation thing. Okay, so to implement these DevOps activities, so first one is so what are the developers which are working on the project? So they are maintaining the source code. Source code is nothing but any type of application you take, it's a web-based application or any kind of application is there. So there will be a source code. If you take hospital management, banking management, any domain you take it, so there is a part of coding will be there. So the coding part will be taken care by the developers, Java developers. If you are working in the Flipkart application, Amazon, anything, Gmail, Google, Yahoo, any type of application is there. So front end, which we are seeing, it is a UI one. It's a combination of UI plus backend. So all this the coding part will be written by the developers. So they want to maintain their code and they want to share that code to the all the developers. So for example, two developers are working. So this is a developer one. So this is a developer two. This is a developer three. He is working on one particular model. He is working on another particular model. He is working on another particular model. So he want to share his code to the developer one. So developer three want to share the code to the developer one to make all the code should to be synchronized. Suppose we have a 50 developers are there. Sharing of the code between the multiple developers, it's a very difficult to merge the code and whether I got the code from other developer or not. So there is a communication will be there, should do it. So in order to overcome these problems, they have introduced the concept called central repository. So central repository is the one solution. Okay, so this central repository, what do instead of sharing the code to each and every developer, which they have written in their own local machine. So whatever the code he has written, he will push the code to the central repository. He will also push the code to the central repository. He will also push the code to the central repository. So what will happen if you want to take the changes of developer 2 and developer 3 machine code to the developer 1, no need to ask them and no need to depend upon those things. So what are the changes you have done and what are the changes you have tested? Okay. Okay. So here you can send the code. You can receive the code. Okay. So both the ways. So what are the developer one, if is working on the module one, he can send the code to the central repository. And developer to what are the coding he has written. So he has tested in local, but this code has to be part of our project. So he is working on a particular model 2, but model 2 has to share the code to the different developers which are working in the same team. So instead of sharing the code to each and everything, so they are maintaining one central repository. So this central repository, he will push it his own code. So if we want to take the code of other developers, so he will take the code from the central repository. Okay, this code management, like sharing of the code or maintaining of the code and new versions has been happened. For example, what are the code he has pushed out? So it has to be carried out. The same code has to be work into different environments. Okay, so it's like okay, so this one it's like a dev environment means developers are working on particular environment, and this is a test environment, and this is a UAT or staging environment, we can call it as. And finally, we have the production. Okay, so developers which are writing the code on the particular thing, so they will push the code to the central repository. From there, we have to maintain one environment, dev environment. So this dev environment, all the people which has written the code and going to merge the code, and all the code will be available in the central repository. So from this code, they are going to push and build the code and deploy the code into the various environment. Again, so one release has happened. Now, next release has to be planned. Again, same, they will work on the again coding part and bug fixes, everything they will do it. Again, they will do the central repository, they will push the code. Again, same version, same copy of the code, same application working should be happening in the all the environments. So this complete flow, which will be involved in the build and deployment. So dev environment setup, test environment setup, UAT environment setup, production environment setup, and automatically whenever anybody updated the code, automatically whenever anybody is pushing the code, so we need to take the code, we need to build the code, and we need to deploy the code into all the environments. So this is the complete workflow of a DevOps person. So code check-in from the developer one to the central repository, and we should have some tool to build this code. Building the code is nothing but how many lines of the code you have written, how many files you are maintaining, how much folders you are maintaining it. So all these things we are going to combining into a single package. So that packaging making, how to do it, all the things will comes under the build automation tools. So once the code is built, now we are going to do the infrastructure setup to deploy your application. Okay, so to build this infrastructure for different environments, So code check-in, building the code, maintaining the infrastructure, deploying the application, all these things will be performed by the DevOps engineer. So we are currently in the first phase, that is source code management. Okay. Okay, so first thing is like we are going to work on the source code management. So what are the ways we can do with the source code management? So how the developers are pushing it, how the code synchronization happen between the different developers, and they don't want to miss the any code from the different developers. So how can we push the code? How can we pull the code? Okay, how to create a branches? What is the branching strategies which we are going to use it? Okay, so what is meant by central repository? What is meant by local repository? So what is meant by working directory? Okay, so what is the workflow of a Git? Okay, what are the commands which will be available in the code source code management? We are going to discuss in the practically. Okay, source code management is completely deals with your managing the entire code of the development work which was done by the developers and synchronizing the code between the developers, and all the codes can be shared across the central repository. From the central repository, the person who is missing the code, he want to synchronize the code with other developers, no need to refer others, so they can refer from the central repository. So what is meant by central repository? How the developer can push the code, how the communication happens, what are the activities we are going to perform it related to the source code thing, we can discuss in the source code management. Okay, so somebody will ask about the SCCM. Have you worked on what is your SCCM tool? Okay, somebody will ask about source code management. Source code management, maintaining the source code of different developers into the central repository to visible to the all teammates in the project. Okay, so there are lots of tools are available in the market. So if you go with Git, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. Okay, so they may chance to ask, have you worked on the Bitbucket? Have you worked on the GitLab? Have you worked on the Git? Okay, so any tool is working on it. So the commands will never change. Commands will be same and usage will be different. Okay, so how you are going to the market, like in the real-time market, there will be lots of tools are available on the source code management. So in the interview perspective, or what are the source code management, which you tool you have worked on it, you can tell that GitHub. So any tool you take it, all the concepts wise, everything is the same. Okay, so how to push the code? Okay, so what is meant by branches? Okay, what is meant by merging? Okay, rebasing, cloning, branching strategy. Okay, so all these things, activities we can perform in the source code management. How the developers, so 90% of the work of the source code management will be handled by the developers only, but you also may take a chance to work on the source code management. Sometimes you need to how to pull the code and how to modify the files, how to check it whether somebody is already modifying the same file or not. So how the merge conflicts will occur if two persons are modifying the same file. So how to conflict, how to match that conflicts, all these things we can discuss in the practical sessions with examples. Okay, so first thing is source code management. This is the thing we should know it. Okay, so here in the first part, we are going to discuss about this part. Okay, how to create the central repository, how the developers are writing the code, how they're able to push the code, pull the code, how the workflow will be happen. All these things we will discuss, right? Okay, so what is meant by central repository is nothing but, so there is a online tools are available. Okay, so central repository. Okay. So like there are various companies, so they are responsible to having the storage solution for your code. So there are two types of things are there. One is a public and private. So public means nothing but you can take the code from online itself. Okay, everybody you can see their code. Private is nothing but within an organization. It's a license based one. Okay, so if you go for any tool, there are public and private things are there. So in our source code management, we are going to discuss about the Git. Okay, so Git is a source code management tool. So in that we have two types of concepts are available here. So one is, so central repository is nothing but Git is a tool and GitHub is a company. So what they will do is nothing but, so they will give a free account for us to practice the things. So you can, they are providing storage for us so that every developer can use that URL and they can push the code to the central repository. Central repository is nothing but where we are going to store our code and can be accessed by the teammates who are working in the project by giving the proper authentication. Okay, so those things we can have it here. So if you want to set up an account, okay, so just click on let's sign out. Okay, so go to the browser, GitHub, login. Okay, so type in the browser, go to the GitHub login, sign into GitHub. Okay, so already if you have the account details, so it will ask for the username password. So if you don't new to the GitHub account, it's a free account. So the account will be activated in 2 minutes. So click on create an account. Welcome to GitHub. Let's begin the adventure. Enter your email ID. So which email ID you want to communicate the details of your thing? Just enter your personal email ID. So click on continue. Okay. So for example, okay. So click on continue. Already taken. If it is taken, we can't take it. Okay. So once your account is valid, then it will ask us to create a password. Create your own password. Username, what username you want to have it. So I can give username. The DevOps training is not available. Okay. Okay. So this name is available. Now you can continue it. Okay. Would you like to receive product updates or announcements for email? No, I don't require it. Just click on continue. Okay. So please is the possible to that way quick start possible to continue. Pick one square that shows two identical objects. Okay. So any one or two objects which are identical. Okay. So once you provide these proper details, you will get an activation link for your personal email ID. Two identical objects. Okay. So no problem. Just try to solve this problem. So whatever the account ID you have given, so you will get activation link. So once you are done this activity, your account will be activated. So then you can click on the sign in. So once you click on the sign in, you have to enter the what are the email ID you have provided and what is the password you have set it. So like that it will be comes. So this github.com is a centralized repository where we can store our project code. So what are the developers which are writing? Different developers from their own machine, what are the code they have written in. So all the codes we can maintain into one repository. That repository we are going to call it as a central repository. So here that we can maintain in the github.com. Okay. So there here we can create one project name. In that project name, we can maintain our code storage, we can do it. Okay. So before that, moving to the Git. Okay. So GitHub is a company and Git is a tool. So every command you are typing it starts with Git. So if you want to work with any command, always we will append with Git. Okay. So before going to the Git, like Git is a free and open source. Okay. So free and open source is nothing but, so within the 2-3 minutes, we can able to activate our account. And if you want to create your project URL, so click the name, click your repositories or click your projects. Okay. So create your own project. Okay. So we can create a new project name. Or we can go to the repositories, click on create a new. Okay. So every project. Okay. So for example, you are working on a particular project name or a client name. So if you have a client name or the project name, if you are specific to the name, so you can create your own repository name. So the repository name is, so something like morning. I'm creating one repository name as morning 7 batch. So this is name should be generic one. So if you are working on the Java project, .NET project or Spring Boot project, any type of project name you are maintaining, just enter the repository name as you wish, then click on the create repository. Okay. So whenever you are working in a real-time scenario, so they will give the URL that ends with .git. Okay. So this is the Git project URL. So everybody in the team, if this is a project URL, until the project is completed, this URL will never change. Okay. So this URL we are going to call it as a source code management Git URL. Okay. So all the developers will configure this URL and they will communicate to push or pull the code from the different machines who are able to push the code to the central repository, and they can also pull the code from the central repository. Okay. So this is the one way we are going to do it by using the central repository. This is a one-time app activity. Just go to the browser. Once your account is activated, click on the repositories. So you can create your own repositories and you can do that. Okay. So every activity you need to perform is a commands only. Okay. So there will be no coding part in the source code management. All are commands. Just we need to know the what exactly the command is. So you may take a chance to work from the scratch project or existing project. Already somebody is doing the project, you will be joining in the middle of the project. So you will be given KT and you will be working on the existing project. So if you are working from the scratch, so we need to go and create the new account for us. Okay. So this is the new account you are going to do it. So to practice our sessions, just we require one Linux machine, Git server. Okay. Meanwhile, the server will be ready. Okay. So central server is created. Central repository is clear, guys. Now we have launched one instance. So that is a developer machine. Now we have created one account in the central repository, and each central repository will have the central repository URL, and we can create a number of repositories there. So one of our repository, the project repository URL is this one. Project repo URL. Okay, repo means repository URL. Okay, when it comes to the Git is a open source one, so we can also license version is there. So here, so GitHub is companies maintaining the, so publicly it is giving, so you can create a number of accounts. So we are going to provide a space for you. So you can push your own code and you can pull the code. Why we require the central repository? Okay, so the developer, we can't guarantee that. So developer is working from only from the India location. So the developers which are working in the project, they may work from the different geographic locations. So if you want to transfer the files from one geographic location to another location, so based upon your network speed and latency, you can send the files. Okay, suppose if you want to send a one file from India to the US, so based upon the distance between the two systems which are present in it, so based upon your network speed, you are able to send the files. But if you are using the central repository, so the persons who are sitting in different geographic locations, like the person who is working from India, US, China, okay, Canada, any person who is working from the development team or any team who are working in the project, if we have the access to the central repository, so with their own internet speed, so they can easily push and pull the code. So if you want to transfer the same files from India to US, it will take a lot of time. Just if you're 2 KB file, 3 KB file, if you're transferring the file from one system to another system, which are present in two different geographic locations, we require a lot of internet speed. But when it comes to using by the central repositories, so the person which is from different locations, so with their internet speed, they can able to easily push and pull the code. So why? Because they are using the background technique. The person who is sitting from any location, so their responsibility, and they will use their own internet speed to take the code from different geographic location and making and organizing it and available to all the developers which are working in the project. Okay, so that's the reason one of the why we are using the central repository also. Okay, and next thing is in Git, we have two activities are there. One is next one is distributed. Okay, so version control system is nothing but so developer is pushing the code continuously. 10 times he pushed the code. 20 times he modified the file. But I want to revert back the work once you push the code. Okay, same thing, you take the examples. Notepad. So I'm writing from here. So 7 o'clock I have started, 7:10 like that I have started. So I have up to 39 lines I have written today itself. But I want to go with the based upon the second time saved. So first time I have saved the content, he pushes the code. So tomorrow he has modified the code and he has saved the file. Third time he has also modified the code. But I want to revert, suppose you have saved the file 50 times. I want to retrieve the code which I have saved at the 12th time or 15th time, 20th time. So whenever you are saving any work, is there any concept to take the backup of each and every time? So when you're writing any code in the notepads, once you save the file 10 times, so we don't have the revert options. So when you open the file, before saving the file, you are doing the Control-Z. But once you save the file, 100 times you modify the file, 100 times you saved the file. But I want to retrieve the file, which I have saved at the 10th time, 12th time, 15th time, 20th time. So backup or like reverting back to the code to the previous state, once you save the work is not possible in any way. But with the source code management, so whenever you are saving n number of times, so the Git company is responsible to take the backup of each and every file. So if you want to revert back to the any state, if there is any problem with your code, I want to revert back to the previous versions, n number of versions, n versions, 10th time save, 12th time save, all these things happen with the versioning controlling systems. So that's why each time you are saving the work, so each time the versions will be maintained. Okay, so whenever you are doing the saving the work, n number of times you do the work, so those many times of the work, your work will be saved in the backend. Okay, so that's the reason if you want to revert back the code, if you're having any problem, if the application is not working, you can easily revert back the code to the previous state. Next day, 10th time saved work. If you want to revert it, everything we can possible by using the versioning control systems, because they are maintaining the versions each time when you are saving the code. Okay, so we have two types of versioning control systems are there, centralized and distributed. So centralized versions of control systems, what exactly it will do? So same here, we have a central server is there. So here directly developers are interacting with central server. Okay, so if you want to push the code, pull the code, anything happens. Okay, so this developer is pushing 100 times, saving daily, lot of commits, lot of work he is doing. 100 times he modified the file, 100 times whenever he's modifying it, so he can able to push the code to the central repository. So here the problem with the central repository, if there is a problem, if we are not able to access this, so entire workflow will be stopped. So different developer machines are connected with the central repository. But if any problem with the central repository, you are not able to push the code and not able to pull the code. So that is one of the problem. And if you want to push and pull the code, we require internet. So in your company, there is a problem with your internet usage or internet outage. So entire workflow will be stopped. Okay. So centralized versioning control, central server directly we are communicating it. So if you are modifying any file, if you are pushing the file, if you are updating the file, anything we are doing it, we are always interacting with the central servers only. So if there is a problem with the central server, there is an outage, any issue, and if there is a problem with the internet, in your organization, there is a problem with internet. Okay, so network is not working, network is very slow, unable to push it. Okay, limited internet. So those type of issues you are getting it. So our entire workflow will be stopped. To overcome this problem, so they have introduced one more concept called distributed. So centralized versioning control system, we are one of the thing is tortoise SVN. Okay, so tortoise SVN is a one type of tool. So before Git come into picture, so most of the companies are using the tortoise SVN. So this is also source code management, but we are directly interacting with the centralized servers. Okay, so if your internet problem is there, problem with central server, so you can't test your application, you can't test it your workflow with central server, and we can't share the code with different developers. If you have the internet, if you don't have the internet, if there is a problem with internet also, we can't able to push the code, we can't able to pull it. So to overcome these problems, they have introduced one more concept, distributed one. So instead of pushing the code to the directly to the central repository, so what they have done, so here central repository will be there. So each developer machines will be there. So before pushing the code to the central repository, what they will do, so they will take the backup of the center code. This code we are going to call it as a local repo. This is central repo. Okay, so what are the central repo code is, first we'll take the backup into the local repo. So the developer is directly working in local repo instead of central repository. So he can work with local machine for pushing the code and pulling the code to test his functionality, no required internet. Because he's working in the local machine, he no need to require the internet for it. So he will maintain one more repository. That repository we are going to call it as a local repository. Okay, so this local repository only he will work and he will work his functionality. Once his functionality is working, then he want to share the code to others. So once he's tested everything, then he will push the code to the central repository. Okay, so for pushing this from local repo to central repo, again we will have the required internet. If the central repo goes down also, you have the backup of the code in his local machine. Okay, same thing. So developer 2 also will maintain the local repo, developer 3, developer 4. So only for pushing and pulling the code from local to central, we require an internet. Same concept for centralized and distributed. Only the change is we are maintaining the local repo. So this local repo will contain the complete backup of your central repo. So the developer can push his new changes that instead of pushing directly to the central repo, he can maintain one local repo in his machine. He will pull or he can do all the code changes in the local repo. Finally, once work is done, everything is tested fine. Then he will push the code to the central repository. So the example for the distribution versioning control system is okay. So previously, like 70% usage around the world using Git. Okay. So remaining 30% other tools they are using Bitbucket, GitLabs, SVN. So based upon the company income are based upon the license and number of users. So due to the cost usages, so the company are preferring the source code management. So distribution versioning control system, currently we are using the Git. Git comes under the distributed. Okay. So we are not directly pushing our code to the central repo. We are going to maintain the local repo. Okay. So to test this, so just we will Git server. Okay. In order to work with Git, okay. Able to understand the concept, right? Distributed and central. Any doubts, any questions, guys? Anybody not understood the concept? Everybody is clear?
Yes.
Okay. So this is very important, centralized and distributed one. So to implement this concept, like we are going to do the practical session with the distribution versioning control system. So currently we are using the Git. So we will check whether the Git is present in not. So to check whether it is available or not, we will do with git -- version. So if it is not there, just we will install Git. So latest version, it will be picked up. Clear the screen and we'll type the Git version. Okay, so Git got. If you are going to perform any kind of activity, so always we will do Git operations only, Git commands only we will use. So before working with Git, so we should have the Git should be installed in the our machine. Okay, so next we will about to how to synchronize this. Okay, to central repository to local machine. Okay, so there is a Git workflow will be there. So Git workflow is nothing but okay. This is called as a working directory. Okay, so there is a Git workflow will be there. So the directory which we are working on the code, that directory we are going to call it as a working directory. So once you add any files, so the files will move from the working directory to the staging area. Okay, so when you add the files like git add. Okay, so when you move when you commit the files, means saving the files. The files will move from staging area to the local repository. From local repository, we can push the code to the central repository and we can pull the code. We can push it. Pull it. Okay, so this is the complete workflow of Git. So this is central repository and this is working directory. In that working directory, So we are going to work on the project files. Developers will write the project files. So when he's doing the any add activity means the files will move from the working directory staging area. So once he is able to commit the files, so we are going to push our code to the local repository. So you can push the code and also we can pull the code. Okay. So these are the activities we can perform it. So if you want to work, so now I'm going to work on something like a Java project. You can take any directory, CD Java. So this directory which we are seeing it, right? So if you want to make this directory as your working directory, so we need to make ls-la, you do it. So we don't have any folders here. So if you want to make this directory, we need to make command. First command is git initialize. So once you do the git initialize, so whatever the directory which you are maintaining it, that directory will become as a working directory for you. Inside that directory, we have a created .git folder. Okay. When you do the ls-la, all hidden files will be shown. Okay. So previously when you do, we don't have any .git folder. But after doing the git initialization, so inside this directory, it got created .git. Okay. So every time we need to type git status. Okay. So when you do the git status, it will tell that no commit set, means nothing has been committed. So now just I'm creating one file. One is form.xml. Okay. So in this folder, I have created file. So if you do the git status, okay. So whenever you are modifying any file, like adding, updating, deleting, any activity you perform related to the files and folders inside your working directory, so it will always recommend and will tell you that. So you have created a file, but this comes under the untracked files. So if you want to move the files from working directory to the staging area, we need to apply the command git add. So if you want to add that command, git add file. Okay. Again, you type the git status. So once you do the git status, so the file has been moved from when you apply the add command, in the backend, the file has been moved to the staging area. Now it is telling the same thing when you type the git status, changes to be committed. So you have added the file, but you haven't saved the file, means you haven't committed the file. Okay. So if you want to commit the file, we can go with git commit -m is message. What message you want to add it? Add it form.xml. To commit the file is nothing but, so once you apply the git commit, the file will move to the local repository. So working directly to the local repository, if you want to move the files, so we need to apply 2 commands. This is fine, but I want to revert back the changes. Like I don't want to go to the, I moved the file to the staging area. Now I want to move back to the working directory. Revert of your work. Okay. So if you want to move from the staging area to the working directory, so we need to use git rm cached. Okay. So before moving to the local repository, from staging area, if you want to move to the local repository, we need to apply the git commit. So if you want to move from the back, revert back your work, so we need to use git rm -f cached that file. Okay. So then again you type the status. Again it is telling untracked files, means git add, you need to add it. Means again the file has been moved to the working directory. Okay. So again if you apply the git add, the file will move to the staging area. If you do the commit, the file will move to the local repository. Okay. So again git add. So if you want to add all the files and folders at a time, instead of going with individual files, we can use dot also. So dot will help us to which are files are modified, updated, deleted, created, all the files you want to take it. We can use the shortcut dot. So now git status, if you take it, so it is telling that 2 changes to be committed. Either you can commit the files, either you want to unstage this. 2 operations we can perform it. So one is revert back, backward direction, or you want to move the forward direction. So if you want to move the forward direction, I can use the commit. Message, new file. Okay, so file got committed. Clear the screen and do the git status. Okay, nothing to commit. Working directly means all the fields has been saved. What are the work you have done? The file has been added, and now the file is moved to the local repository. Now how to communicate with the central repository? Okay, so what are the URL is there? Just we need to take the URL. Okay, so whether it is configured or not, if you want to check it, so .git config. Okay, so in this file, we can see our URL. To which URL you want to communicate it. So we can see that this file. So if you want to add the sync, so we need to use the command git remote add origin that URL. Sorry. Git cat file. So git remote add origin. Which repository URL you want to add it? So take that URL, copy it, add it without any error. So if you do the same thing now, get. Okay. So before you do it, so config file has not been updated. So if you see the config file, so our remote URL is where you want to see our central repository is URL. So you can see. So now we are able to communicate to our central repository. If you refresh it, so nothing file has been moved. Now from the developer one machine, this is the developer one machine. Now I want to push this file to central repository. Now up to here is done. Now I want to push the code to the central repository. So if you want to push the code, so now the local repository central repository communication has to happen. So whenever you are doing the push command, where it has to be pushed. So the remote URL, you need to add it. So we have added a remote URL. This is a one-time activity of your project repo URL. Now you want to push it. In order to push, so previously it is asking about the username and password. Okay, so whatever your login username and password for pushing, it will ask username. Now recently they have changed it to the token based. Okay, so username is your email address and password will be your token. So how to generate the token? So go to the settings. Here we have the developer settings is there. Personal access tokens are there. Okay, so generate new token. Token name. So something like morning batch. Okay, so repo related all activities I want to perform, workload related packages. If you want to delete any packages, admin related activities, keys, hooks, notifications, user related, all the things we will check it. Generate a token. So what is the token we are getting it? The token will copy it. Okay, so now if you want to push your code, just push username origin. So there will be a branches will be there. So for every, if you are not creating any branch, so the default branch is master. Okay, so if you see the git status, always it's telling on branch master. So this is the default branch for all repos. Okay, so if you want to push the code, origin, destination, branch name. Okay, if you want to push to the new branch name means we can change master with branch name. Push new origin master. So if you refresh the page, we don't have. Go to your repositories. Okay, so here we don't have any files. Now I want to push the code from local repository, central repository. So you can use push origin, asking for username. Username is your email ID. Okay, password is asking password. We need to provide the token. Copy it, mouse, right click button, we need to press it. Just press enter. Okay, so we didn't get any error. Able to push it. Comment refresh here. Okay, now we are able to push the code. Okay, so this is the workflow from the developer one machine. So he has created a new file, has moved to the staging area, local repository and center repository. Okay, so what are the code we are maintaining it? So that code also we are having in our local repository. Only for pushing and pulling the code, very required internet. So we can work in our local machine and we can do it. So this is the complete workflow of Git for pushing the code. Understood, guys? Any doubts, any questions? Any questions, guys? Okay, if you don't have any questions, we'll wind up the class here. Tomorrow we'll catch up at 7. Okay, chalo, bye guys.